Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we have a new microphone, which should be a relief to anybody who values the sanctity of their ears. But we're going to talk about quite a few things. There's a lot of complications with the transfer situation at Manchester United. What's moving, what's not, where are things going? Talk about striker quite a bit, how it ties into Mount and other situations and all of that. Um, Talk about some of the sales, goalkeepers, the center back situation, right backs, and of course, we'll start it off with the takeover since there has been news since the last video that I put out. So first and foremost, Qatar went in with another bid on, was it Tuesday morning, that Qatar came in with another bid, a higher bid again to United while to the Rain Group and Glazers while putting in a deadline that they wanted to really hear back and actually be engaged in the process by Friday, or they would walk away from the deal. A couple of things from this, obviously, I think to some degree this confirms a lot of the information that we've had out there that, Ineos were pretty much engaging with Rain Group and Glazers while Qatar were not over the last few weeks. It's kind of been as I suspected, and an article came out from the Times saying that Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid were in the final stages of negotiations with Rain Group, and were essentially moving forward towards the close prior to this point in time. And that the expectation is that this is kind of a final gasp. Now, we'll see what happens. We'll see if the new bid changes the situation at all. Obviously, I mean, depending on who you are, even if you want Qatar at this point, you have to not be excited about if the situation gets delayed longer and longer due to the dragged out nature of this. If it were Qatar in the situation of closing and the deal was nearly done with the club, I think I'd feel the same, that I wouldn't really want this to continue being dragged out for the sake of whatever. At this point, the club needs to be sold. This needs to happen. It is strongly affecting things moving forward. A couple of weeks ago, there was some starting an operation, like things are going to be done soon. At the start of this week or at the end of last week, there was an expectation that this week it would be potentially decided and wrapped up with Ineos and or in general, the people who thought this, at the club did not know who it would be, but they believed that this week they were supposed to get something more decisive. It is Thursday. I can confirm for a fact that as of yesterday, the people at the club, as of yesterday, had not received any indication of what was happening on this process, but that could obviously happen. As I understand it, there's something going on today with regards to United, and I don't know what, but something is happening today with people at United. So perhaps there is an update in brewing in terms of updating the club. But the situation is Ineos have been in the final stages moving forward. Qatar made a new bid. We don't know how that affects things yet. The positive of this is because of the Friday deadline, we kind of get an answer Friday, don't we? If you think about it. If they don't engage with Qatar on Friday, Qatar walk away, you're left with Ineos, and there's no more question about what happens. If on Friday they do start engaging with Qatar, then I guess we don't have an answer because it could still go either way at that point in time, and the process could drag for weeks or months longer. But we could have an answer, almost a finality on Friday. So there's a positive to this deadline. I like it personally. I do. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago, that I thought both parties should put it on the line and make a deadline, either one, and just say, look, you accept our bid, you move forward with it at this point in time, or we walk. And I like that Qatar have done that, because even if they lose, it's better for the club that this process gets done now, right? Regardless, either they get their bid accepted and it moves forward, or they don't. And it cannot keep being played. The parties can't keep being played against each other. And that's the fact of the matter. That's the most important thing now. It needs to get done. I don't like that it has continued and the parties have been played against each other over and over and over again, where we as fans cannot be sure what direction things are going or that there is a finality in store. And so I think that by Friday, then we will get this finality just based on this deadline. But there was also and has been an expectation that this would be the decisive week. It's the Glazers, so you never know, but it does seem to be that there are things occurring as of now that should lead to some sort of decision that can be passed along. Okay, so that's where we are at, and I'd love to put a time on it because it was supposed to be this week, but it's the Glazers, and it still should be, but we'll find out in the next few days, I guess, at this point in time. So I'll give you updates on that. There's certainly some things I'm checking out, and if I have updates and information in the next day that I can share about this, then so be it. Then I'll put it out there, and we can go from there. But otherwise, we do often get news on Friday, regardless. And with this deadline, we should get something. On the striker situation, this is complicated. Let me go to my notes here because I mentioned in the last video there's been some articles that have come out from elsewhere, from Athletic, etc., last night talking about the striker situation, talking about the chase and all of that. And it's complicated. I can say for sure Manchester United are very advanced on Holland. There was an article yesterday from Matteo Moretto saying United have everything they need. They can move ahead on this. I know they do, and they could move ahead on this very quickly. The question is exactly how does it play out here? We know they're going to press ahead for Kane. I've been told this. I've been told they're going to press ahead for Kane. They don't think Madrid will get him. They're going to push ahead for Kane and try to make a deal there. How does this affect things, and how does this affect everything else? Well, they're still pessimistic about it. It still seems unlikely. What Erik ten Hag wants is to sign Mount and go for Kane at the same time. What he may not be able to do is both of those things. And so what I think is going to happen is going to press on Kane. It's going to not move quickly. He's going to then move forward with Mount. There have been talks on that have been occurring. They're about 15 million apart, as I understand it, less than what's being put out there. It's a little more advanced than it's being made to see. I think that's a deal that will get done and can get done as soon as they decide to really move on it. But given the budget, given the holdup, which is the Glazers, it's not FFP, it's Joel Glazer, they have to kind of likely figure out if Kane is going to happen. And then I believe that Erik ten Hag will press ahead with signing Mount and signing Rasmus Holland when Kane doesn't arrive. Now, they might check in on these other targets like Gonzalo Ramos. They've made checks on that. I don't know if they're thinking that they are worth the money that is being put out there for Gonzalo Ramos, for Victor Osimhen. I don't know if they think it's viable, but we'll see if they try those before moving on. But my expectation is they try for the big name, they try for the big top striker, then they get Mount and Holland in, and ideally with budgets and sales later on, that doesn't mean they still can't try to get another striker on top because Erik ten Hag would like it. Declan Rice is very likely going to Arsenal. It's always been the case, but he's very likely going to Arsenal, and so it may be that a second midfielder, if they're brought in, is that cheap one in Rabiot. And so you could see a scenario here. They make that push for Kane, end up getting Mount and Holland, see about selling McTominay, see about selling Van de Beek, see about moving these players on, see about moving Martial on if that's possible, while they continue to look at could they get in another striker, another attacker in on top of that. But they'll not want to miss out on getting a player in the striking position if they cannot get one of these big names at first, like Kane. So they'll likely sign Holland. And so it's a little bit of a complicated carousel, and a big part of that is because of course, the takeover and the budget. If they had all the money, they would just sign Mount, push on Kane, push on another big striker, sign Holland, continue to push on that striker and get it done. Then make your sales and such for other positions. But it's going to be a bit of a tricky kind of, and this is how it's been for transfers at United for a long time, and this is why it drags, is because they can do all the work. Murtaugh and Ten Hag can do all the work that they want. They can push forward. They can say, oh, we're lined up Holland. We're lining up this. We're lining up that. We're lining up all these deals, which is what they're doing. But they have to like shuffle the cards around to figure out what they can spend. It's such a complicated process because it's not just you have all this money and this is how it's going to work. The budget could change. The budget could go more. Eric Ten Hag thinks that he's been told he can spend more than what he's being approved for now. That's his perspective. So it's really coming down to, it's going to come down to that I think they could get Mount and Holland before sales, and that's probably the most likely scenario. But it's all dependent on sales and the takeover as to how it goes elsewhere. Unless Kane just pops in, and if they sign Harry Kane, then you're going to see sales before you make any other signing under the Glazers. So complicated. It's complicated. The deals are being lined up. They're pushing forward, but it is complicated. And I try to explain it in kind of the somewhat convoluted way of thinking that it has to be explained in, because that's how it's operating. In terms of sales themselves, who is for sale? We saw news that Donny van de Beek was for sale. I think we knew that. On top of Bailly, tell us all of that. I've said for quite some time that Donny van de Beek is likely to look for deals this year. There's Maguire, who is for sale. He may want to stay, according to Larry Whitwell, but he is for sale and could be interest of Spurs. There's the Henderson thing, and we'll talk about goalkeeper in a second. There's McTominay with interest from Newcastle and Everton. So there's a lot that could happen here in terms of sales that could change the situation and the budget for United. And those are all being worked on as well at the same time. Now, and they will definitely add to the budget, especially ones like McTominay's, where it's purely profitable for the club, and Henderson. Now, the complication is you've seen on multiple occasions now, they've said they're not going to approve Henderson's sale until De Gea's contract is signed. But I don't totally get that. I mean, I get it, because he's going to want to be number one. If they don't approve the contract for De Gea, maybe they keep Henderson and give him a try. It seems like that's still a possibility, but what does that tell you? Think about it for a moment. If they're not willing to sell Henderson yet, that tells you that maybe there's some consideration here. Dean Henderson wants to be number one, so he's not going to stay and be competition for De Gea, even if he thinks he can win it. So there's still a chance De Gea could go, but they want a keeper. They want a goalkeeper, no matter what. So if De Gea doesn't stay and De Gea doesn't sign that new deal, or they don't approve that new deal, then Dean Henderson could stay and be the number one, and they wouldn't sell him. That's also a possibility. If De Gea does sign that contract and stays, they will sell Dean Henderson, but they're still looking at keepers. And even if it cannot be Diogo Costa at this point in time, even if the budget is not there, especially without the takeover, it's not there. It's always been about that. Can the budget stretch to that? They are looking at other keepers who could compete. David Raya is likely to go to Spurs. But, you have Verbruggen, you have Ian Sommer. These are names that could come in and be number ones at Manchester United, even with De Gea here. So they're still looking at it. It's still an area. Something's going to happen here. It's either going to be, if De Gea stays, Henderson is sold and a new keeper will be bought. If De Gea leaves, Dean Henderson will likely stay and be number one. Or at that point in time, he could be sold too, and someone like Diogo Costa would be brought in for sure. A big, top, high quality keeper would be brought in. So something is going to happen in this goalkeeper situation. It is a necessity to address. Moving forward with that, in terms of the center back, right back situation, it's confusing. You saw reports from Paul Hurst earlier that they were not really looking at a right back anymore. That's been my information for 3-4 months now, that Wan-Bissaka has earned his place back in. He was first choice to end the season, frankly, and will be there with Dalot. And there's been some talk that there's an interview with Wan-Bissaka, all of that. I think that's accurate. There was talk about Jeremy Frimpong. That happened ages ago. It had continued, but they have not progressed any further in making a move. There's talks about Denzel Dumfries. I think that's way out of date, and I think that'd be a huge mistake. I don't think he's a good player at all. And then there's talk about Benjamin Pavard, and that is true too. I think I mentioned in a video before, United approached for Benjamin Pavard as a right back, not a center back. He's not interested in the move. So I don't think a right back will be signed. I don't think it's a priority right now. I think Dalot has his new contract. Wan-Bissaka's here. They're going to give it the season. And C, then re-sign Wan-Bissaka if he's doing still very well at that point in time and Ten Hag is happy with the two he's got, or at that point move on Wan-Bissaka. But at this point, he's happy with him. He's happy with him. That's my understanding. In terms of center back, it's also complicated because, yeah, if Maguire goes, you probably need to bring a center back in. But you got to think for a moment. You bring in a Kim Min-jae, he's not coming to be a bench player. He's not going to come in case Varane gets injured. Varane and Martinez are easily the two best center backs that we have, and they will be no matter who we sign. Varane has some injuries, but it hasn't been that bad. He's rotated a bit, but Victor Lindelof has also been a fantastic rotation. Luke Shaw covering left-footed for Lisandro Martinez. I'm not sure. I'm still unsure here about how this works. There was, again, some articles that it's not a big priority, this center back thing. Anyway, when you look at the budget overall, when you look at the frustration with striker, midfielder, and maybe not being able to move on Mount and Kane at exactly the same time and all of that, I don't see how you can buy a center back. I don't see how they're lining up a 50 million move for a center back. So I could see a younger one coming in who doesn't need to be a starter if and when Maguire moves on. But I'm not sure that we've seen the right names for it. And again, Urian Timber, I think, is a more real one because he's more flexible, can play around the team quite a bit. And Ten Hag knows him and really likes him, but also expensive. So I still suggest waiting on that one because I think that's going to be dependent on takeover and sales pretty significantly. I don't think they're just going to sign a center back. I understand that thing about Kim Min-jae's release clause and the timing of it. Are they signing a starting center back? We need a starting goalkeeper. We need a starting midfielder or two. We need a starting striker. I don't know that we're signing another center back to be a starter again. That would make, 3 or 4 summers in a row that we've signed center backs, or 3 or 4 out of the last 5 or 6 summers, which is a lot. So we'll see there. I'm a little confused by that, but as far as I've heard on my side of things, it's not a priority. I don't think they're lining up 50 million for that. If anything, a cheaper, younger player being brought in if and when Maguire leaves, which is not yet guaranteed. He doesn't have a ton of offers, especially at his wages, and they're not going to make a bunch of money on it either. Okay, so that's the information I've got. I hope to get an update on something with regards to the sale in the next day or so before news comes out. And I'll keep you updated on anything else. United pressing ahead with Kane. Talks continuing on Mount. Holland there ready to be taken. Those are kind of the 3 major deals in priority, while other discussions and explorations kind of continue. Okay? Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.